The quiet power. How to turn underestimation into your greatest weapon. The underestimated rise. Reclaiming your story when they laugh. 2. Let them think you were a joke until you flipped the table. Flipping the table. The ultimate guide to self-mastery and unstoppable momentum. Have you ever navigated life feeling completely disregarded? Like the world was making a private joke at your expense. Perhaps every utterance you made, every effort you exerted, was simply waved off, scoffed at, or overlooked entirely. There have been individuals who judged your capacity and dismissed your potential with an almost aggressive certainty. Certainty, potent enough to extinguish anyone's spirit. They slapped labels on you, confined your identity, and treated you like a footnote, a peculiarity to be amused by. And for a considerable stretch of time, maybe you absorbed their narrative. You wore their mockery like an oppressive garment, moving through your days believing this was your appointed station, that this was your ceiling, that you were merely the setup for someone else's punchline. But here is the vital distinction. Their perception is fundamentally flawed. The person they are minimizing, the individual they are shrugging off, is not defined by their limited viewpoint. You are not the distorted image reflected in their narrow frame of reference. You are certainly not the sum total of their cheap jokes. The instant you grasp this, that the superficial reactions around you hold no sway over your intrinsic worth. That is the very first spark of your awakening. You begin to achieve profound clarity. And make no mistake, clarity is a hazard to those whose influence relies on your silence, your meekness, and your unquestioning submission. You permitted them to believe they held authority over you. You allowed them to assume they had already figured you out. They concluded that because you kept a low profile, because you deliberately minimized your presence, you must be weak. But listen closely. Silence is not always surrender. Sometimes silence is meticulous preparation. Sometimes it is deliberate strategy. Sometimes it is the profound stillness just before a major seismic event. You were collecting knowledge, observing, constructing, and yes, sometimes experiencing profound adversity. Yet, in that arduous experience, you were reinforcing your core. Every derision, every sneer, every patronizing glance was a profound Lucina mentor cloaked in unkindness, revealing the exact nature of the arena you were operating in, and the specific kind of fortitude you needed to cultivate in response. And then, inevitably, that specific moment arrives. The instant where sustained patience, sheer persistence, and careful readiness culminate in decisive action. You overturn the entire arrangement. You reveal to them that the person they presumed was without influence was, in reality, merely calculating, that the individual they laughed at was quietly converting every slight, every casual insult, every single underestimation into pure, unstoppable propeller. And when you finally make your move, when you ultimately refuse to be overlooked, the immediate shock is palpable. They did not see it coming. They were utterly incapable of anticipating it. It never occurred to them that someone they had relegated to the sidelines could rise with a momentum they could not check, a presence they could not possibly contain. The true elegance of this lies in the fundamental psychology of surprise. People who condescend and belittle thrive on knowing what comes next. They depend on witnessing predictable patterns, the compliant folding under stress, the silent nodding of agreement, the defeated shrugged. When you deliberately demolish that expectation, when you completely dismantle the narrative they pinned for you, you are no longer a trivial character. You are no longer merely a supporting actor in their script. You become the principal author of your own existence, the one holding the instrument that dictates the new terms. And the sheer, bold audacity of your emergence is often enough to make them scrutinize every single thing they thought they knew. This journey is not simply about revenge. It is not about proving them wrong merely for external validation. This is about reclaiming your inherent power, about firmly staking your position in a world that aggressively attempted to marginalize you. The people who once laughed at you, who once whispered their doubts behind cupped hands, have absolutely no understanding of the strength required to endure and subsequently to ascend. They possess no comprehension of the unwavering focus, the self-discipline, the sheer mental force required to not just weather humiliation, but to actively transform it into an unstoppable force. Every grain of doubt they cast your way, every smug facial expression they flashed, becomes a foundational element in your rise. Every time they concluded you would shatter, you stood firm. Every instance they counted you out of the running, you remained engaged, you studied, you expanded, and eventually you powerfully emerged. And when you fundamentally change the dynamic, when you flip the table, it is far more than a simple act of defiance. It is a fundamental declaration. It is the statement that you will not be made smaller, that no fleeting label, no dismissive laughter, no casual cruelty will ever define your destiny, that you are inherently capable of complete mastery over your own journey, capable of earning respect and capable of determining outcomes that they simply could never have conceived. You force them to realize that underestimating an individual is not just a tactical error. It is a profoundly dangerous one, because the underestimated often have the most significant leverage, nothing to lose. And when they finally choose to engage, they do so with a fierce intensity born of calculated patience, honed intelligence, and an absolute refusal to be ignored. This is the very essence of true transformation. To withstand mockery is a common human experience. To internalize and believe it is a personal choice. To rise entirely above it. To convert every insult into a deeper understanding. Every slight into a core strategy that is truly extraordinary. That is the factor that differentiates the passive observer from the powerfully engaged, the timid from the truly awakened. You have learned to decipher the intentions of those who doubted you, to foresee their next moves, and to recognize the patterns they themselves are blind to. You have achieved deep insight into their psychology, recognized the social games they play, and become capable of leveraging their own failure to see your value into your greatest operational advantage. So, let them continue to think you were insignificant. Let them casually dismiss you. Let them profoundly underestimate the depth of your endurance, the scope of your planning, and the unwavering strength of your resolve. Because the moment you assert your presence, the day you finally refuse to be treated as less than you are, the resulting impact is truly vast. The laughter instantaneously freezes in their throats. The smirks instantly dissolve. The casual underestimation is replaced with shock, then awe, and eventually, grudging respect, or at the very least, a clear, terrified recognition of the force they utterly failed to account for. And that, ultimately, is the definitive victory, not the petty revenge, not the jokes you now get to tell at their expense, but the undeniable mastery of your own existence, the command over your own destiny. The world may still try to box you in, to label you, and to minimize your presence, but you have learned the single most important, fundamental truth of all. Your period of silence was never weakness. Your suffering was never defeat. Your patience was not idleness. It was focused preparation. And preparation is power. When that specific power is finally unleashed, it can no longer be ignored. It cannot be confined, and it certainly cannot be laughed away. You have flipped the table, and in the quiet certainty of your new standing, the joke is finally and completely over. Remember that any gift or skill you possess is a divine grace given by God, intended for you to cultivate and use for your greatest purpose, regardless of the limitations others try to place upon you. The experience of being minimized also provides a profound gift, perspective. It is in this challenging space that you learn to disentangle your inherent self-worth from the need for external affirmation. You come to see that mockery and dismissal are not inherent truths about your potential or your character. Instead, they are powerful reflections of the other person's narrow scope, their limitations, and their own deep-seated fears. Once you fully integrate this knowledge, you are no longer tossed about by the changing tides of others' judgments. You develop an unbreakable resilience, firmly anchored in the clear understanding that your true value is determined solely by your focused actions, your unwavering integrity, and your sheer persistence, not by the passing laughter or the empty scorn of those who are simply unable to recognize your latent strength. Perhaps the most valuable element of inhabiting the underestimated position is the complete personal metamorphosis it facilitates. Every single slight transforms into a strategic foothold. Every instance of underestimation becomes potent motivation. Every doubt cast upon you by outside observers morphs into a profound opportunity to prove, not to them, but to yourself, the true depth of your capabilities. Don't you learn to master patience, to construct plans with meticulous care, and to act with surgical precision? You discover how to refine frustration into focused discipline, convert mockery into vital learning, and channel dismissal into pure hard strength. Over time, the very people who once casually laughed at your attempts are rendered entirely irrelevant because the person they assumed they knew has evolved far beyond the limits of their comprehension. And when the critical moment finally arrives, when you deliberately unveil the immense power you have patiently forged, the individuals who once dismissed you are left utterly staggered. They are brought face to face with the inconvenient reality that their judgments were profoundly flawed, that their laughter was misguided, and that their arrogant assumptions were, in fact, a weakness in their own character that they had overlooked. You successfully took the negative energy they invested in minimizing you and completely converted it into forward momentum. You used their disbelief as the very fuel that drives your ongoing success. In achieving this, you demonstrate an undeniable, universal truth. Underestimation is never a ceiling. It is always an opportunity, a strategic hidden advantage reserved only for those who possess the vision, the enduring patience, and the sheer resilience required to recognize and leverage it. Being underestimated teaches you one of life's most empowering concepts. Your value is never defined by those who fail to perceive it. Their fleeting opinions are transient noise. Your committed actions are enduring facts. Their empty laughter is hollow. Your relentless persistence is truly transformative. Their mockery is momentary. Your achievements are permanent. And when you finally act, when you decisively step into the authority they presumed you lacked, the old power structure is shattered. The world is compelled to recognize your formidable presence, and the joke is powerfully revealed to have been on them all along. This quiet state, this intentional silence, is often tragically misconstrued as timidity, as a form of submission, or as a fundamental lack of ambition or courage. Outsiders see someone who doesn't react impulsively, someone who simply observes quietly, and they immediately assume that person is without power, completely invisible, or simply unworthy of attention. But I tell you, silence is a tool, and when wielded correctly, it possesses far more force than mere words alone. There is a deep, profound intelligence in merely observing, in carefully listening, in absorbing every intricate detail of a situation without revealing your true intentions too early. The person who is quiet is not empty. They are actively calculating. They are meticulously preparing. They are building an intricate map of the world and the people within it, understanding that the loud, the boastful, and the impulsive will simply never attain. Every casual slight, every pointed joke, every dismissive gesture becomes a crucial piece of a much grander puzzle. While others are occupied with speaking, reacting emotionally, or frantically trying to assert immediate dominance, the silent person is learning. They are studying behavioral patterns, mapping weaknesses, noting reliable sequences, and identifying optimal opportunities. Silence is not passive behavior. It is intensely active observation. It is the conscious, disciplined choice to conserve precious energy, to hold back the immense force that will eventually change the entire dynamic. When you maintain silence in the face of provocation or doubt, you are strategically refusing to grant them the gratification of witnessing your emotional reaction. Simultaneously, you are gathering the raw, essential materials needed for your ultimate strategy. People who thrive on mockery and the act of underestimation fundamentally rely on your predictability. They desperately want to see reactions that will confirm their preconceived assumptions. They feel securely comfortable when they successfully provoke anger, genuine hurt, or public embarrassment. They are reassured when an individual reacts impulsively because it validates their perception of their own control. Silence completely shatters that expectation. It forces them to confront a terrifying unknown. They cannot accurately measure your true strength, your depth of patience, or your firm resolve if you consistently refuse to reveal it prematurely. In this powerful sense, silence operates as both an unbreakable shield and a finely tuned weapon simultaneously. It completely protects you from unnecessary exposure while allowing you to operate in a critical space that they can neither penetrate nor influence. This quiet period is also a vital time of self-mastery. While the outside world is busy judging, mocking, or attempting to distract you, you are internally refining and shaping yourself. You are confronting your innermost fears, testing your actual limits, and internalizing the full scope of your potential. This profound internal work is entirely invisible to others, yet it is infinitely more significant than any fleeting display of outward bravado. By diligently controlling your emotions, your impulses, and your reactions, you are not only preserving essential energy, but you are also deliberately cultivating a sense of authority over your own self that no external force can ever seize. Self-control becomes your unshakable foundation, and from that solid foundation, you can act with surgical precision, unwavering confidence, and maximum impact when your moment finally arrives. And remember, every gift of self-control and inner resilience is a light from God, enabling you to navigate the world with purposeful strength and quiet determination. The critical moment arrives when all the accumulated patience, all the quiet observation, and all the rigorous preparation finally coalesce into decisive action. Rising with formidable force is never about uncontrolled anger or a frantic attempt to merely validate oneself. It is the sophisticated culmination of strategy, self-mastery, and optimal timing. It is the exact point where the previously underestimated individual asserts their undeniable presence, demonstrating that all prior assumptions, all dismissive mockery, and all casual shrugging off were profoundly, catastrophically incorrect. When individuals laugh at you, when they label you a joke, they operate under the assumption that your power is negligible, that your patience signifies weakness, and that your silence equals compliance. They are utterly blind to the impending storm, quietly gathering momentum beneath the surface of force that draws strength from every single insult, every deliberate slight, and every moment of underestimation. Rising with force is defined not just by the act itself, but by the undeniable impact. The underestimated individual has nothing left to prove to the outside world, only to themselves. And when they finally execute their plan, the intensity of their emergence is indisputable. It is the shock of seeing someone who has spent years observing, learning, and constructing their power suddenly step forward and resolutely refuse to be ignored. This is a force that commands attention because it is measured, precise, and born from a deep understanding of the inherent weaknesses and comfortable assumptions of those who mocked them. The underestimated are gifted with the element of surprise, and surprise remains one of the most potent weapons in the landscape of human interaction. When you rise with this calculated force, the individuals who once ridiculed you experience a severe cognitive dissonance. They were certain they understood your limits. They believed they could reliably predict your behavior. They confidently assumed you would remain passive and ineffective. And then, instantaneously, the entire established narrative flips. Your commanding presence, your decisiveness, and your sheer strength completely disrupt everything they thought they knew. The shock is not just that you possess power, it is the realization that their entire foundation of assumptions was fundamentally wrong. The underestimated have often sharpened their ability to read others, to anticipate moves, and to act in ways that are unexpected yet devastatingly effective. They are not merely reacting to events, they are executing a detailed plan that was patiently refined in silence. Rising with force also powerfully communicates an unwavering clarity of purpose. There is no visible hesitation, no hint of doubt, no second-guessing your actions. Every action is meticulously deliberate, every utterance intentional, and every movement calculated for maximum effect. The previously underestimated fully grasp the power of timing and precision. Acting too soon or too impulsively can entirely dissipate the impact. But acting at the precise moment transforms years of preparation into dominance. The people who mocked dismissed, or minimized, you suddenly understand that they were witnessing only the prelude, merely the profound quiet before the storm. And the immense force with which you now act is not simply personal or emotional. It is the perfect manifestation of all the preparation, all the learning, and all the patience that remained completely unseen. Moreover, rising with force is the most profound demonstration of transformation. It is the visible proof that focused endurance, rigid self-discipline, and unwavering self-control yield undeniable consequences. It is a powerful, living testament that those who appear outwardly quiet, passive, or unassuming are often the very ones capable of the greatest deployment of power when the moment absolutely demands it. Individuals who misjudged you are confronted with a truth that cannot be dismissed. Underestimation is an unforgivable miscalculation. Those who have been patiently waiting, observing keenly, and preparing thoroughly possess a strength that is measured, wholly intentional, and ultimately unstoppable. Their ultimate rise is not chaotic, it is utterly inevitable. There is also a critical psychological component to rising with force. When the underestimated act decisively, they seize not only opportunity, but also authority over perception. The people who once laughed at them can no longer dictate the ongoing narrative. The story is no longer about ridicule, mockery, or false assumptions. It is entirely about the reality of who you truly are, about the quiet power you cultivated in silence, and about the force that emerges when meticulous preparation finally meets opportunity. This psychological shift is monumental. The previously underestimated individual now becomes the one who defines boundaries, who sets new expectations, and who commands respect in ways that are impossible to ignore. The table has been overturned, and the rules of engagement are now decisively yours. But to sustain this impact, you must achieve mastery of self. It is not sufficient to be underestimated and then simply rise with force. To ensure that the impact is lasting, you must understand yourself completely, command your own mind, and act exclusively from a place of internal authority. People who resort to mocking or belittling you assume they can easily shape your behavior, manipulate your emotions, or dictate your choices. They operate under the grand illusion that external forces inherently possess the power to define you. But the real, transformative mastery begins with the clear recognition that your value is intrinsic, a gift from God that is internal and cannot be given or taken away, that no one else determines your actual worth, and that unwavering self-discipline is the foundational rock upon which all true influence and sustained impact are built. Self-mastery demands relentless honesty with yourself. It is the continuous willingness to confront your inherent weaknesses, to calmly examine your deepest fears, to acknowledge your mistakes without flinching, and to take full responsibility for your actions without blaming external circumstances or other people. Those who seek to demean or diminish you rely on your failure to take ownership of your own life. They thrive on projection, distraction, and deflection. The instant you stop allowing external judgment to dictate your behavior, you reclaim a vital power that no amount of mockery can possibly touch. You internalize the understanding that every critique, every sneer, every slight is simply external noise. It does not and will never define your capabilities or your ultimate destiny. To master oneself is also to assert absolute control over impulses and reactions. The underestimated have profoundly learned that reacting without prior calculation is strategically dangerous. Acting on sudden anger, blinding frustration, or the simple need to prove oneself in the heat of a moment rarely produces the transformative outcomes that enduring patience and deep strategy can achieve. Self-mastery is the discipline to wait, to construct a plan, and to act decisively at the precise moment that will maximize impact. It is the ability to transform baseless provocation into refined strategy, thoughtless criticism into crucial insight, and underestimation itself into undeniable opportunity. When you assert control over your inner self, you effectively control the entire external narrative. You consciously choose precisely how, when, and where your considerable power is revealed. And this level of absolute authority is something that can never be successfully contested by anyone else. Ultimately, self-mastery culminates in absolute autonomy. It is the unshakable understanding that no outside individual defines your life or dictates your final outcomes. While others are busy attempting to categorize, judge, and control, you operate from a position of profound independence. Your choices, your disciplined actions, your eventual success, and your measurable impact are determined solely by your internal vision and your unwavering discipline. This inherent autonomy is the ultimate expression of power because it ensures that external perception, casual mockery, debilitating doubt, or persistent underestimation cannot, under any circumstances, sway your chosen trajectory. You are fundamentally free, decisively effective, and utterly unstoppable, capable of converting every challenge into a strategic opportunity, every personal slight into a crucial lesson, and every moment of patience into the explosive force that flips the entire table on everyone who once dared to dismiss you. In achieving, you build a foundation for lasting influence and an unshakable, commanding presence. You are no longer merely subject to the transient opinions, expectations, or passing judgments of others. You are no longer defined by the ridicule of your past. Every measured step you take, every calculated choice you make, is a direct manifestation of intentional power, securely grounded in self-awareness, emotional resilience, discipline, and absolute clarity. Those who once underestimated you are left in awe, not because you desperately sought to prove them wrong, but simply because your complete mastery of self has rendered their flawed assumptions entirely irrelevant. Your entire life becomes your powerful statement. Your actions become your undeniable testimony, and your presence transforms into a formidable force that cannot be ignored. The process of turning pain into power is the defining moment for anyone who has experienced prolonged underestimation, mockery, or dismissal. Every insult, every deep slight, every moment of genuine humiliation becomes far more than a fleeting, negative experience. It becomes the potent raw material for profound internal transformation. People often view pain as an intrinsic weakness, something to be avoided at all costs, something that inherently diminishes a person. But the reality is completely different. Pain is a demanding teacher, a sharpened guide, and an indispensable catalyst for change. Those who fully grasp this principle do not merely endure suffering, they actively convert it into forward momentum, into core strength, into a measurable force that successfully reshapes their circumstances and commands respect from every person who ever harbored a doubt. When someone minimizes you, they inadvertently expose their deepest assumptions, their own operational ignorance, and their complete inability to recognize potential power. The sharp sting of being dismissed or laughed at is undeniably real, and it has the potential to be debilitating if you allow it to dominate your thoughts. But pain, when recognized and properly understood, is not a final destination. It is an invaluable tool. Each cruel word, each mocking gesture, each moment of betrayal is a lesson in human psychology, a precise mirror reflecting the weaknesses and deep-seated insecurities of those who sought to diminish you. By carefully studying the nature of the pain inflicted upon you, by reflecting on the true intentions behind it, you begin to grasp the psychology of manipulation, arrogance, and habitual underestimation. This comprehensive understanding becomes your fuel, guiding exactly how you act, respond, and ultimately rise entirely above the circumstances. The underestimated often harbor a quiet, simmering awareness that they have been treated unjustly, overlooked, or dismissed. This is not destructive, uncontrolled rage. It is a controlled force. It is energy that, when harnessed correctly, fuels disciplined growth, powerful ambition, and the relentless pursuit of your definitive goals. Pain transforms into fundamental motivation. Every time you consciously recall the doubts cast upon you, every time you remember the dismissive laughter, you convert that memory into absolute resolve. You channel the discomfort into unwavering discipline, resolute patience, and targeted focus. You no longer react to the world from a place of fear or despair. You respond from a place of calculated strategy, with the clear intent to achieve, to assert, and to dominate the narrative on your specific terms. Resilience is at the absolute heart of this entire process. Pain tests your limits, necessitates endurance, and actively measures your patience. The underestimated individual often discovers reservoirs of strength they never knew they possessed precisely because they faced severe adversity. They learn to persist when recognition is absent, to cultivate skills when praise is purposefully withheld, and to maintain dignity when others attempt to publicly humiliate them. Through this ongoing trial, they develop an incredible psychological advantage. The very people who once dismissed them cannot possibly predict the resourcefulness, the deep patience, or the sheer tenacity that has been so meticulously cultivated in silence. By enduring and proactively learning from the experience of pain, they grow stronger, demonstrably more capable, and perfectly prepared to act decisively when the moment finally demands it. In the end, turning pain into power completes the cycle of transformation. It moves the previously underestimated individual from an identity of invisibility to one of profound influence, from a state of passivity to decisive action, and from a history of ridicule to a position of earned respect. The table is finally flipped, not through emotional, impulsive revenge, but through sustained mastery, superior strategy, and a deliberate, forceful assertion of self. Every act of quiet endurance, every valuable lesson extracted from hardship, every ounce of strategic patience and reflection, all culminate in a single, powerful moment of undeniable presence. Those who once comfortably assumed you were a joke are now utterly forced to reckon with your capability, your intense focus, and your unstoppable momentum. The joke is truly over. The table has been overturned, and the world is finally compelled to see the full, undeniable extent of the power they once so foolishly underestimated.